All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Chuck Van Pelt, and I'm one of the board members of the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. And the reason I'm up here is because I wanted to moderate this panel. I'm really excited to introduce John Hardie here. So when we started doing the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, so 12 years ago, we started putting on an event like this, and it was much smaller. I think we had a couple hundred people our first year. And I hadn't really heard of the Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas, and so I learned a lot from my friend Rick, and he showed me some DVDs that were filmed of that event, and I got really excited about it. And I got excited about just getting together with a lot of other video game fans, and one of the things that was really appealing to me about it also was this live auction that they did. And I saw in the video this guy, John Hardie, is just, kind of had the crowd wrapped around his finger and was really entertaining. And so I said, I got to go to the show, I got to check this out. So that was the beginning of my interest in CGE. So John is, just to give you a little background, he helped create one of the first national video game collector shows in the U.S. This was in the late 90s, called World of Atari. And he then created, with Joe Santulli and Sean Kelly, created the Classic Gaming Expo. And then they've been collecting for years, and they took this sort of video game museum on the road to trade shows like CES. And their vision was to create a national video game museum, and they successfully did that in Frisco, Texas, and he's the co-creator of that. So can everyone just give a big round of applause and welcome John Hardie.
I'm honored, thank you.
So I think we're just gonna, John brought some slides, and rather than go through all of my marginally boring questions, I thought I would just let John kind of walk us through his slides here, and we'll make it very conversational. And I don't mind if people just ask questions, if they raise their hand. Absolutely. If they have questions. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
All
ask
right.
me anything, right? Is that the
very
thing
good,
nowadays?
very good. Okay, so I'll let you, I'll move your slides for you, and you can take it away.
First of all, thanks for coming. I didn't expect more than 5 people in here, to be honest with you. I know I'm going up against YouTubers and a couple of Activision guys later, leave me in the dust, but thanks for coming in, and I see a lot of familiar faces. It's nice to be able to talk about. I think we did one once at CGE. We did a little talk about the history, but I just want to take you through some of how we got to where we are and things like that. And I brought some footage of the very first World of Atari show in '98, which we found some old pictures and stuff. And so this is just that title. Okay, here we're in the National Video Game Museum. Go ahead. And a little subtitle, from dumpster diving to CGE to NVM. We've been collecting games, my partners and I, for over 30 years, doing a lot of covert things and, trying to get preservation going back when a time when nobody was thinking to save that type of stuff. One of my favorite pictures is us with the puppy Pong and Nolan Bushnell. So again, just some slideshows, just to show some stuff. We'll breeze through it quick because I do have a lot of slides, a lot of pictures. So these are original tickets for World of Atari in '98. It was held at the Boardwalk Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. I think they tore it down the next year after we left. And World of Atari was run by a guy named Rich Tsukiji, who was the guy who ran World of Atari shows back in the 80s, back at Atari during its heyday, probably 84 and even later, 87. He did a bunch of those shows in different places. And he had teamed up with Brad from Best Electronics. If you're an Atari guy, Brad has been selling stuff for years. They were buddies, and they asked myself and my partner at the time, Keita Aida, to handle a portion of the show, and they basically ran all the serious financials and things like that, and we were responsible for the museum and getting a lot of alumni to come to the show. And that's one of the things we're proud of, is getting the alumni, because we got a lot of people to come out to the show, and it was an unknown thing at the time, right? This was a show there was no internet, so we would trade lists every month, and you talk on the phone, but we wanted a place where people could actually get together and meet the people that they've been trading with, and just like-minded people. I don't remember, what was that World of Atari, 300 people maybe or something,
Yeah, when the show, when that World of Atari happened in the 80s, that was more of a trade show because they were actually
was.
in business at the time. What was your vision for recreating that event in the 90s? Who was your audience you were hoping to get? Was it collectors?
It was collectors, but at the same time, it was kind of it was limited focus with World of Atari, and they used that name because Rich had that name. He had used that for other shows. His vision of the show, and the reason we broke off the following year to start Classic Gaming Expo, was he wanted to turn it into a mini E3 that had just video games. Classic video games would be just one little part of that, one little corner. And we didn't feel that was the right direction where we wanted to go. As it turned out, there was no follow-up show from those guys because Rich was actually involved in a real serious motorcycle accident, and he was laid out for quite some time. And that's kind of how we branched off and said, okay, we're going to run with it and we'll broaden it, classic gaming. It's not just Atari, as much as I would have liked it. No, I'm kidding. Being an Atari guy, but we wanted everybody, Coleco and television, whatever you were into at the time, NES even, So, there was a lot of that branching off. But go ahead. Sure. We did a book, Memories. I couldn't find the original manual, the original show program. I do have it. This was like a Memories from World of Atari. You see an auction ticket there. I'll tell you a little bit more about the auction in a little bit. Go ahead.
So you had real sponsors, like
we did
with money and stuff.
Namco.
We can't even do that. Really.
Believe me, it was hard. But over the years, we had Namco. Of course, their Namco Museum. They actually sponsored the museum the first year. Nyko was one. They were a manufacturer of controllers that was getting into it. We have had Next Generation, Hasbro. We had Ubisoft at one time. So over the years, a few. This guy named Steve at Wiztronics. Wiztronics made a lot of upgrades for the Atari computers. So he was one of our vendors. That's Sean Kelly and a guy named Dave Stein. Sure, and I don't know how well you can see, but I encourage you to look close at some of the pictures. There's some really cool stuff that was probably what we would call dirt cheap back then today. But back then we were probably balking at the price. And as you see a lot of the product on the tables, you can see there's some really cool stuff that was for sale at that show. Go ahead. Dan Kramer, if you don't know, he's the master of trackball, former Atari employee. He had brought a bunch of stuff. I think there's a Cosmos on the right side. Is that right from the picture? There's something on the right there, yeah. We ended up with that Cosmos. It's in the museum now. He was a bit of a pack rat and saved a bunch of the stuff from those days. Bruce from BNC Computer Visions. And if you've been to the later shows, the quantity of stuff he had kind of thinned out to more just the same type of stuff. But back then, there was just all kinds of crazy stuff these guys would bring in.
Was he the one that had all the the overstock of like Jaguar stuff?
Well, it was him and Brad from Best Electronics were the two that always collected all the, got to go into Atari's warehouse and buy out their stock over the years. And I believe that's another picture of Bruce's booth at BNC Computer Visions. Again, like artwork, all kinds of crazy stuff you would find in there. There's a handsome gentleman named Kurt Vendel. For those of you who know him, he runs the Atari Museum website. He had brought out a bunch of prototypes to show off, and that monitor is actually a prototype monitor for the 8-bit computers, an XC1411. He's got a CX2000 there, the blue console. So he was showing off a lot of the stuff that he had collected over the years. That's Brad from BNC Computers, not BNC, Best Electronics. Brad, again, just all kinds of crazy stuff these guys would bring and sell there. Tim Arnold, Tim now runs the Pinball Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. Always did charity work with us for the Salvation Army. I believe that year he gave away an Asteroids arcade machine, and he shipped it, and he would do raffles. And he had this annoying bell that every 3 seconds he'd bang, and he'd be ringing the bell for another sale of raffle tickets. But great guy, and definitely his heart's in the right place with what he does. If you're ever in Vegas, check out the Pinball Hall of Fame. It's really cool.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I recommend it.
That's what we got. So this is an interesting guy. And this was the only year we had him there. It was called Jack Berg Sales. And Jack Berg came, we didn't know, I don't even remember getting the guy there or whatever. This guy had the stuff. I mean, if you look, you can see there's Game Time watches. There's all kinds of like plush Miss Pac-Man, all original. He must have been a distributor or something. Loads of Coleco stuff. I think he had a ColecoVision kiosk there, and the Game Time watches at the time. I think he wanted like $60, and we were like, $60? What are you, crazy? Get out, And who wouldn't pay that today for a Game Time watch in the box? I mean, just a different time. Of course, everything's become more expensive, but the guy really had a lot of quality stuff. It was all brand new, so I don't know why he didn't come back the following year. I know he made a ton of money because he was selling stuff left and right.
We get those kind of stealth vendors too, where they say, "Oh, I want a booth." You've never heard of them, and then they show up with like, just amazing stuff, and nobody even knew. They just came out of nowhere.
He just had all kinds of good stuff there. I think he even had some StarPath demo units. So the StarPath Supercharger, he had several of the actual demo unit that they would use in the stores. And again, maybe it was $60 or $75, but
That's where I got mine.
Yeah, is it? Yeah. You remember, right? Jack Berg was the stuff, yeah. I have no idea who this is. It was a vendor at the show. Again, we had a lot of these vendors who just, at the time came in where they had, again, there wasn't an internet, so they were just collectors. Maybe they sent out trade lists. I honestly don't remember the names, and I apologize to them if they're around, but...
So was World of Atari always a national show where you always, like, most people flew in from somewhere?
Well, World of Atari and even to a point, Classic Gaming Expo, being in Las Vegas was always a destination. Mm-hmm. And, those of you who know the show, we were never able to grow the show more than, 1,500 people at our peak. And you look at a great show like Portland now and Midwest Classic and these shows, and they've grown it. And I think to our fault, Vegas, as cool as we thought that was, because who wouldn't bring their family to Vegas? It's a cheap flight. There's so much to do. But there really wasn't a lot of local attraction there because there is so much to do. And, Chuck was telling me that Portland has roughly 20 different individual game stores and, mom and pop run stops. There was nothing like that. So people were coming in, and most of them were flying in to Vegas and making a weekend out of it or whatever. And, there's only so many people willing to do that. As much of a good time as it was, but, it was a little tough with that. So, my favorite kind of vendor back there, the one you have to just dig through their stuff.
The garage sale special.
Yeah,
that's my favorite too.
I love those. You find the gold. Some of the guests. So that's my partner Kada at the time, with Rob Fulop from Magic, and formerly Atari. That's Katz Congo Worley, the founders of Electronic Games magazine. John Harris was the Frogger. That's Jerry Jessup. He brought his computer space and his Pong machine that year, and Jerry, a former Atari guy, now with Sony.
That is a nice looking computer space.
And that is serial number 1 computer space, I believe.
Wow.
So Len Herman is on the right with his back to us, and Len is a proficient author that actually is at the show here. Mike Micah in the background, who's in the business of Other Ocean, Digital Eclipse, and Don Thomas, who any of you, when Atari was going out of business, you probably might have dealt with Don. He was the guy responsible for customer service, and when they were selling things off cheap at the very end, Don was the guy you would call up and say, "Yeah, I'll take 50 portfolio memory cards for $1 each," or whatever. When they were just clearing stuff out. So
You said Mike Micah?
Mike Micah, yeah.
Is he the one who made that version of Donkey Kong where
it is, and he also
Pauline is the hero?
Yeah, he also did Berserk, the voice enhanced Berserk that came out years ago. He's definitely been around.
Amazing
for a while.
guy.
Yeah. That's Dan Kramer with trackball. The woman on the right is Van Burnham.
It's an interesting look there.
Yeah, you might remember, know her. She's big online and and been around for a long time. And some quick pictures of the museum. So the first museum exhibit was actually stuff just laid out on tables, and we didn't even have cards. We had numbers. You'll see one of the other pictures. We just put numbers out, 44, and then you had to refer to your book and say, okay, 44 is the PGP1 or the Atari 2000 or this. And it was very, very primitive, but it was one of the most popular. There you'll see some of the cards with the numbers on them laid out. And it's interesting too, some of the stuff I have no idea. It's not ours because a lot of it was loaned as well as our stuff. Like that California license plate that says Atari, I have no idea who that belonged to. There's definitely some stuff there that wasn't ours, but I wish it was because it's cool stuff. My favorite picture. So Rick and Chuck can probably relate to, and Hans, or whoever's involved with the show, what it takes to put on a show. And World of Atari was probably no different. And we worked through that night before the show opened in the museum, and literally got about 10 minutes of sleep because I think the show opened at 9 or whatever, and it was probably about 8:30. We said, okay, and we were in the museum and we were exhausted, and we just laid down on the floor and slept for 20 minutes or so. But my friend Kada actually had some kind of reaction. I don't know if he ate some shellfish or something, but his foot got all red and swollen. And the only thing we had was this ice bucket, and we put beer in it, because we always have beer with us. And it was the only liquid we had or something that could cool his foot. So this was one of the classic pictures taken of Kada with his foot in a bucket of beer, trying to get the redness and swollenness or whatever happened to him to go away. So
I've been there. I can sympathize with this picture for sure.
You've had the bucket of beer, yeah?
Similar circumstances, I think.
One of the first, so afterwards, the following year, Classic Gaming Expo. That was our first time handling it on our own. Sean Kelly came in as one of our partners, and it was the three of us that put that on. And again, some sponsorship, Nyko, Next Generation Magazine, we had Telegames, Hasbro. It was good. It was good. We had a big amount of guests. Guests is something we've always done really well with over the years. I don't know how we conned some of these guys into coming out to our show. You can ask those two guys. Maybe they'll know. I don't know why they did it, but somehow we got these guys to come out to Vegas and party with us and have fun. And so Steve Wozniak was out at the show. That was the year in California. The alumni in the center is the four creators of Dragon's Lair, and that was the first time that they had been together in like 20 years. And we reunited them. Of course, they had a new product. I think Dragon's Lair was coming out from one of the new versions they had done, Dragon's Lair 3D or something. So it was also a promo thing, but it was really cool to bring them together. Obviously, Ralph Baer on the right, father of video games. And then, I don't know who those guys are at the bottom there. I'm kidding. It's Mr. Crane and Mr. Kitchen. The dynamic duo of Activision that were enjoying themselves at one of our dinners. I might have trouble reading this next line. Go ahead. So there's a little trivia I threw together, and let me see if I can, if we can take a look here. Just some quick. That's cool. Just some quick facts. Long before it was cool or hip to have Lifetime Achievement Awards, we were the first to honor men, women companies created the video game industry. So we had Golden Joystick Awards, and basically we took an Atari joystick and we cut the cord off. We probably opened it up and took it out, and then we spray painted it gold and mounted it on a little base with a plaque. And that was our first Lifetime Achievement Award, and they wore out pretty quickly. I remember seeing one some years later, all the paint had flaked off, but only the best for our people. We would often crash parties. The Southern California collectors. There's Steve over here. Remember, we always like to, after our VIP dinner, we would go out and about and find out who's having a party, and we would just crash the party. And usually we were drunk already, and that was the origination of what we call Kool-Aid Man, which is me, because we were at some party. I forget, it was one of the first years, and I forget, it might have been the SC3 party with Jeff, right? And I think we got there late. The party was pretty much over, and the story has probably exaggerated over time, but we knocked on the door and someone came to the door, sleepy, like opened the door, like looked out, and I just exploded in like, oh yeah, we're here, and we come crashing through and revived the party. And we always had some alumni with us. Warren Robinette, we'd bring around, the guy who did Adventure. So there was always 2 or 3 guys with us that wanted to have a few beers and some laughs, and it was a lot of fun, I mentioned the Dragon Slayer guys, that was in 2001. If those of you that didn't know, we actually moved the show to California in 2004 and 2005, San Jose and Burlingame, because we weren't growing enough, and we figured California is where the industry started. Why wouldn't it succeed there? And it succeeded in the sense of guests, but again, downtown San Jose, man, it's like tumbleweeds, ghost zone, so there's nothing going on there. And then we eventually moved back to California. But San Jose was our best showing ever with alumni, and some of the guys, Steve Wozniak, Jerry Lawson, Fairchild creator, Bushnell, Al Alcorn, Dennis Coble, Roger Hector. Some of these names you may know or not. Tom Slober, Jay Smith, who designed the Vectrex, Ed Logg did Asteroids, Owen Rubin, Ed Rotberg did Battlezone and other stuff, and others. I mean, we had over 100 guys, and they knew each other. It was great to see Jerry Lawson and Al Alcorn and people who were competitors in business. And hey, what's going on? It's really good time, really good time. Great story. So one year this is a little trivia. We forgot to get permits to do Classic Gaming Expo. We showed up, I think, in town either Wednesday or Thursday. And by the time it dawned on us, we probably went to the county offices on Thursday, and they told us it would be 3 business days and come back on Monday after the show. So, big oversight, and so the big joke is that that did one year, we did a show and we didn't have permits to do that show. And the whole weekend, anytime somebody came through the hotel or our area in a suit, we were like ducking and hiding and praying that they weren't going to shut us down. And as it says, that's no joke, Sean Kelly actually had a name badge that said not Sean Kelly, in case somebody was looking for us at the time. So, Bob Smith, I don't know if he came in, but Bob Smith, I was just talking to him about earlier. So as we got more elaborate as years went on, we made custom awards for people for our Lifetime Achievement Awards. Dave Crane, we made a slot machine it took a regular slot machine, had a 2600 playing his version of slot machine inside of it. Well, Bob Smith, we decided to do Riddle of the Sphinx, and we had a pyramid, and it was covered in sand and some trees and stuff, and we used, I didn't actually make it, it was a guy named Scott Stilford made it, but we were pretty sure that Bob was going to die because the smell from the epoxy or whatever he had used was so overpowering that you couldn't be in the same room as this award. And I asked him about it, and he still has it, and he said the smell is worn off. So but it was kicking. It was kicking. And then the Dig Dug drop. I don't know if any of you heard the Dig Dug drop. Somehow we thought that was a good idea. At 2002, we left one attendee bleeding and another with burns around his neck. And I'll tell you more about the Dig Dug.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah, good. So 2002, I forget what game we needed, but so 2002, we were recreating a game. We did a homebrew release, and we needed a chip that was in the Atari 2600 Dig Dug for our game. And at the time, O'Shea's was selling, O'Shea's was a big liquidator, had picked up a bunch of games. They were selling games for like 80 cents. And we bought a couple hundred, 200 of them, because we were doing 200 cartridges. And what do we do with all these boxes? We have all these empty boxes left over. What the hell do we do with them? Hey, it's a shame to just throw them out. Actually, it might have been 7,800 Dig Dug. I don't remember, but they were Dig Dug.
200 right? Of the cardboard outer boxes.
Yeah. We took the cartridges apart, and so I think I have to take blame. I want to say credit, but I'll take the blame to come up with the idea that we could drop these. And the reason I came up with this idea was I had been, I think, that year at E3, and at E3, I remember walking through Nintendo's booth, and I got hit in the head with something, and it was a Pokeball. And they were dropping them. They're little foam. They were foam. Open it up with a zipper, and there was a little pokey creature inside. And as stupid as I thought that was at the time, and I've gone on to become a big Pokemon player with my kids, so I'm eating crow, my foot in my mouth. But I'm like, but that's kind of cool to drop something like that and have people like looking for stuff. So I came up with the idea of let's drop these boxes. We'll hide coupons in them, and out of 200, maybe 20 will have like a coupon for something, some fancy prize. And we had special cartridges. We gave all kinds of giveaways. And I went out to a fishing store and I bought 2 nets, and we kind of stitched them together to make a big net, and we suspended it from the ceiling. You can see it actually in the right-hand picture there. It was suspended up on the ceiling, and then people underneath, and we dropped it. And it was kind of mayhem, and what we didn't plan was this. There was ropes that supported it, and all we had to do was pull the rope and it would fall. But people saw it, and they weren't stupid. It wasn't like we were surprised, ha-ha, and then you get bombarded with Dig Dug boxes. So they were standing there like waiting and looking up. And finally the time came, and there was a big crowd already there. And I remember we pulled the thing, and the boxes were flying, and it was mayhem. And you can see, I think is that Matt Reichard? I think he's eating a box. Yeah. That's him, right? Yeah. I think he's eating a box. But anyway, somebody did actually get, I don't know, their hand stepped on or something, because it was madhouse, and trying to be fair, and people were throwing boxes and over their heads from the people that were inside. And we were panicking now because we see this big, mass of people, and we're afraid somebody's going to get trampled. And we also had these stupid ropes that were coming off the corners of the net. And at one point, I'm pulling on a rope, and I think it was Charles Dysart, right? And Charles was a longtime CG guy, was trying to get to the box, and I'm pulling the rope, and I didn't realize the rope is wrapped around his neck. And he's reaching like this, and I keep pulling like this, and then I let go, and I'm trying to figure out why I can't get the rope come like this, and I'm pulling him back like every time he reaches for it. Just
Is Charles in here?
Charles is here. I don't think he's in here.
Is he in the room?
He's in, yeah, he's in there.
Okay.
Yeah. But and then I don't know why Matt decided to eat a box at the end, but that's a great picture too. And a lot of these pictures, if you guys go on Atari Age, Albert and those guys have definitely a ton of these types of pictures. Actually, some of these I got from them. Really good stuff. So enjoy those. But anyway,
so it looks like your next slides are about the museum.
Museum, right?
So I'll go to this next slide here, but I kind of wanted to ask,
Sure.
When did you guys first decide you wanted to do a museum?
Well, so the museum grew. That was definitely one of our most popular things that we did at CGE. And actually, before I jump to that, I just want to mention, because I did say I'd talk about the auction real quick. The very first auction at World of Atari, they hired a professional auctioneer to come in. And the guy knew nothing about the products, video joger, he was mispronouncing everything. He had no idea what the stuff was. And he was, give me the 50, one of those type things. And I couldn't, I don't know about you guys, I'm kind of intimidated when an auctioneer is like that, because I'm like too slow to react, and it was just bad. Not enjoyable. We all complained about the prices, although in hindsight, again, we would have paid that today in a heartbeat. But those at the time were like, what, this guy's nuts, right? So bad that we didn't do an auction for a couple of years, actually. I don't remember when we started again. It might have been 2000, maybe 2001, and then somehow I got suckered into doing it. But that's when we brought it back.
So you tried the auction, the live auction. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh. And so you had this bad experience with this, so that kind of soured you from the whole...
It did. We didn't do it for a while after that.
So then they recruited you to be an auctioneer.
That was one of the...
Yeah.
You know how that goes, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I find that really so interesting because for me, that is the high point of the show. I mean, I really enjoy that. And to hear that it started out as one of your first kind of like unsuccessful things that you tried is really amazing. Because, I'm glad you guys ended up turning it around because it's really great.
It became a fun thing, and especially we got involved with different charities over the years, Boys Girls Club. I forget some of the others we did, and if any of you've been there, the recent ones, we were pretty successful auctioning off a beer. I always had a beer with me, or many, and we would auction one off at the end. I believe the last one we did at was it the Plaza? I don't even remember. The Riviera. The guy who won it, he paid I think it was over $300 for one Corona. And it was for charity, and actually it was for us because we were starting the museum. And we are a 501c3, so it was legit. But the guy who won it actually was the guy who handled the lights for the hotel, for the theater. And I'm like, dude, you have no interest in game. He goes, I got caught up in it, you know? He goes, it was a lot of fun. So he and I
know the
them up
feeling.
there. And yeah, it was good. It was good. All right, but jumping back to your other question about the museum. In 2004, we approached E3 and said, would you like us to do a classic exhibit? And surprisingly, they were like, yeah, sounds good. Why don't you do it? And the very early shows at E3, we had a lot of fun with. We would put up, they had the areas where you would walk from one hall to another, and they had display cases there. And we would put in, like, one year we had, like, a bunch of Activision games for one of their anniversaries. And another year we had Starplex controllers. Everybody knows the Starplex. And, you know, we put signs up, check out the latest in controller technology at Kentia Hall, you know, and just have fun with it, you know, showing off old products. And people, you know, kind of oblivious unless you're into the classics, they were like, oh, cool, yeah, let's check it out, you know, and it was a lot of fun. We got in trouble a couple times for doing things we weren't supposed to do, putting programs out where, you know, when you're supposed to pay for that. And one year we were giving away Pac-Man lottery. We were doing trivia in the middle of the hall, and you know, if you answer a question right, we give you a Pac-Man lottery ticket. We had bought, I think New Jersey had them at the time, and I bought a pack of 100 of them, and you know, but things like that they frowned upon because you're causing a disturbance in the force. So I don't know. But yeah, we went with that.
Was that at like CES or other?
It was E3.
E3, okay.
And that was the first show. We did that for years, and it grew. And E3 dwindled. Now, you guys know E3 has kind of gone down. A lot of the publishers have merged, and there's not as many different booth people. So we moved from Kentia Hall, where all the scrubs were. You know, the little companies that just had a little booth here and there for licensing or a meeting room, and we ended up on the main floor. And we did some great exhibits. We did an Activision one year where we had all kinds of Activision signage. I think we had like every Activision game. And the guy, favorite story, Activision, the real Activision, was down further down, and a guy comes along with a big cart of food, and he's like, Activision, right? And I'm like, no, they're down there, you know, but I was real tempted to take the food and have some fun with it, but it grew, and then we went back to, gone to the GDC, and we did PAX East, we've done PAX South, South by Southwest, Kamikaze. So we grew to the point, and GDC Next was one. We were doing about 5 shows a year, and go ahead, I'm sorry.
Were they inviting you to come, or were you like a entertainment that they wanted to bring?
It was,
Were
yeah.
you
It was to
renting
them. It
out
was
a
an
space?
attraction. It was an attraction. So like 2004, our first exhibit, we actually won Best of Show from Xbox magazine, and we had our little 80s living room set up, and people loved it. And that was always one of the big attractions.
If you guys like our 70s living room out there, that is straight up stolen from CGE. That is 100%.
That's right.
We thought it was awesome, and we copied it.
A lot of people really enjoyed it, and it was a great thing. And you could always find Keith Robinson, if you know him, passed away, but he was always anchored into our couch and showing the latest in television stuff, and it was just a lot of fun, a lot of good times with good people. But at one of these shows, and I'll segue that to the museum, we met a gentleman named Randy Pitchford. Randy Pitchford is a modern day guy, does Gearbox Software is his company. They do Borderlands, and they did Battleborn, not as successful, but he really came up to us at a show, and I'm classic, I'm old school. I don't know Randy Pitchford's and Tim Schafer's and these guys, and Randy, and I love Randy, I'm good friends with him now, and he lives right there in Frisco as well. And I tell him the story. He came up to me, and Randy, if you've ever seen him, is kind of a nerdy, dorky looking guy, like a lot of us, right? And for years we've been hearing stories like at E3, guys would come up, hey, we want you to come to Brazil, and we want you to do this, and hey, bring your exhibit here, and we'll pay for everything, and we'll do this and that. And after the show, there would be nothing. Crickets is what we always say. So when this guy comes up to me, he's like showing me pictures of a little museum exhibit in his office, and I'm building a new building, and we're at 30,000 square feet, and this, and I basically really just dismissed him. Not to be rude, and that's not, people who know me, that's not how I am. I think I'm very humble, but I just heard it 100 times. Yeah, we'll come down and we'll build a museum. Okay, yeah, go on. All right, thanks. But then we saw him being interviewed, and Tim Shaver, and they were using one of our 80s setups as an interview thing, on IGN or Kotaku, one of these. And I'm like, wow, this guy is somebody. I didn't know, because again, all I know is old school, stuff. And we made a deal, the three partners, after the show, we each call one guy, and somebody was going to call Tim Schafer, because this was a show, DICE, that appealed to the upper echelon of the gaming community and companies. And I called Randy after the show, and I said, hey, buddy, remember we met at DICE, and you said about this? And, God love him, he didn't say any, he kind of blew it. Let's meet up. We'll meet at this. I forget where we met next. GDC. He took us out to dinner, brought us down to Frisco, introduced us to the mayor and the community, the EDC and economic development, community development, all these people, and they loved it. They loved what we wanted to do, and over time it morphed from being in his building, which had a high cost for square footage, and we ended up in the what we call the Discovery Center, and we ended up with over 10,000 square feet. Originally we thought 30, so there was a lot of things we cut, but it was important to get those doors open. When you have a big collection, it's all in storage in Vegas, and we're bringing it all over the place, it starts to take a beating after a while, and over time, there was things that we said, we got to do better than this, and the real solution was to open a physical place. We put it out, and we don't have to move it around. So if you look here, April 2014, this is our museum. It's a giant warehouse space. They used to build missiles in there years ago. The other half of the building is still currently occupied, probably more than half, by a company called GEA. And go ahead, let's do it. So you can see it's just this big, hollow, cavernous space, and the city of Frisco spent $1.3 million to renovate it for us and build additional parking. And they basically put up these small walls that would, form the flow and outline of the museum. And here's some early shots. This wall that's a woman named Anna Terry, and I think I have a better shot of the completed wall later on. But she's basically painting that. She's a muralist, and we hired 7 or 8 muralists to, artists to work in the museum. And the artwork in the museum is, again, not bragging, but it's tremendous. These guys. Oliver Wade was an industry guy. He worked on Spyro, Ratchet and Clank. He designed our mascot Blip and did 2 or 3 of the art designs. So here she's doing this giant mural all by hand. And as you can see, in true CG fashion, we don't do anything easy. We put up the counter and the TV first, so she has to paint around that. We don't make it easy. So. Go ahead, run through it a little bit. This is the computer area where we talk about the rise of computers. So all the old company logos were done, and most of those companies obviously long gone. And just to show you though that, when we first approached this, we hired a company called White Oak. Was a company who does projections. What will it take to open a museum? And they told us you can't open a museum for less than $10 million. And we're like, I disagree, And that's one thing about the three of us, and those who know us from working at CGE, we have a hard time spending money, especially because with CGE there never was money to spend. You always, you're happy to break even after the show, a few dollars, you'd invest it, maybe some arcade games for the following year, whatever. So we would never big on just blindly saying, oh yeah, we'll spend this and we'll spend that. So a lot of the work in the museum that we could do ourselves, we were very hands-on, and we did. So, prime example, this is part of our lobby. We're actually hanging speakers. We ran all the Cat5 wire throughout the museum ourselves. Just a lot of that basic stuff that we didn't need to hire a guy for $100 an hour to do. But we could just, we'll buy it and we'll do it.
So you and Sean and Joe were hands-on.
Very
doing
hands-on.
this stuff.
Very hands-on. The display cases, we bought them and we assembled them. We could have paid 3 times as much for the same product and had someone deliver them ready-made, but again, it's not something we're used to. My favorite, this is no longer in existence. We've changed it now. This is the Ralph Baer mural. It's made out of 640 Rubik's cubes. And the students at SMU Guildhall, their professor wrote the software to convert the picture of Ralph into this mosaic, and their students actually solve the cubes. They didn't cheat. They didn't pull the stickers off and everything. We did take it down just this past couple months ago when Keith Robinson passed away, and it's now a mural of Keith in respect. And that's the title of that exhibit, is Respect. You know? Leading up, there was a lot of delays. You saw we started in April of 2014. We were supposed to be open that Christmas, or then it got pushed to the summer, and then back and forth. And this was, you know, we kept having delays from our museum design firm, and basically, this was a joint meeting where we finally put pen to paper and wrote down April 2nd, come hell or high water, if we're done or not, we're opening April 2nd, and that's the date we opened, so it's kind of cool. That was the line to get in. So this was a room to the left. You see there's doors there. That was an event space. This line actually went out the building. Oh, lost you there. It went out the building and wrapped around the front of the building. And it was so many people that we used that event space. We had bands playing, like Nintendo, Zelda music. We had a DJ in there. Oh, I think it's your, there you go. So that was, you know, we would actually funnel people into that room as a holding area, and then we had tickets that you could come in when we called that next group of 50 people or whatever. And so just some slides from the museum. They don't do it justice. Everybody says the same thing when they come and see it. You know, for those who have been, they can attest that pictures probably don't really show, but this is one of the exhibits, is the timeline. Those controllers do work. And you can pull up an electronic version of any of the consoles on the wall, or another 50 that are digitally in there. And they'll tell you everything we know about it, you know, when it cost, when it came out, how many were sold, specs, good games, bad games, etc. The giant Pong machine, we're still waiting for, who's the guys that do the authentication? Guinness Records, we're still waiting for them to give us the world's largest Pong machine. But again, really cool. It's fully interactive, it's playable, and it was designed, the programming behind it was done by a guy at Gearbox, and it's actually perfect. Here's the mural now in the finished version. You can see, and that's missing part of the left side of it. It's just an incredible piece. Hey, we had walls, so now instead of just a couch and a table and a TV, we were able to do paneling. The dogs playing cards, the Velvet Matador, and all that stuff. The rotary phone. This is so we decided we never did a bedroom. Let's do an 80s, mid-80s bedroom. And what's really cool about this is seeing people interact. So all the cabinets and drawers are filled with stuff from the 80s. California raisins, wacky packages, little gnomes, trolleys, things, whatever, baseball cards, you name it. If you look under the bed, there's a Playboy under there too. So, it's not really a Playboy. I always like people's faces when they pull it out and they're like, you know, but it's actually just a cover on top of like a computer magazine. So when you open it up, it's like 48K for, you know, $1,500 or something, you know. So real old school computer magazine. The Crash, one of our favorite exhibits, is a little mock store there. They're showing a business going out of, you know, family-run mom and pop operation, video game store going out of business at the Crash. And what's great with this is, you see I have a clearance bin there. At least once a week, I have somebody at that bin with a stack of games in their hand, on the phone. Hey, dude, they got Missile Command, they got this, and I'm watching. And sometimes, if I feel particularly evil, I'll let them walk all the way up to our real gift shop and try to buy them. But for the most part, I sometimes will stop and say, I'm sorry, they're really just for show, you know. Our controller wall, and you see part of that fake store there as well. The controller wall, again, the artist did it. It's like squadrons of controllers and a Gallagher theme coming down. And this leads to Pixel Dreams is one of our exhibits. We have 18 exhibits, and I left a lot out because I knew I had a zillion slides already and was going to be pushing on time. And I want you guys to come explore, and I don't want to give it all away. But this area is called Bonus. So a lot of store kiosks, a lot of posters and things, and then the entrance to Pixel Dreams, which is our 80s arcade. Everything you might want in an 80s arcade. The neon, black light, cool space scene, 42 arcade machines, 80s music that I personally picked out. That's really good. This is really cool. The centipede was done by a guy, one of our artists, and he painted the whole space scene, but he did the centipede as well, and it's made out of foam, and it's like busting out of the wall, so a lot of fun there. But I urge you to come down. I think that's the last slide, right? Yeah.
That's the last one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are at the end of our time,
Okay.
and I would love to talk to you for hours more.
I
It's
can
really
get
fascinating.
long-winded. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we didn't really leave any time for questions, but what we can do is, if it's okay with you, head over to the museum. If
Sure.
anyone has any questions, they can follow John over here to the museum.
Yeah, I'd be
and,
honored. I'd be honored.
do autographs if you want, and just ask questions and stuff over there. John, I really appreciate you
Thanks.
coming out here.
Sorry I talked so long, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming out. To me, it's an honor to be able to speak, and I feel like I'm somebody, with you guys. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, and please do check out the National Video Game Museum. If you get a chance, go to Frisco, check it out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Grab a flyer on the way out.